Warning. This program contains strong language, auditory violence, and mental nudity. It is intended only for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to your uncensored home for World of Warcraft news and opinions. With your host, Berzerker, this is Unshackled Fury.
All has been revealed. A new age is on the horizon as the Dragonflights are once again returning home. So welcome back to your uncensored home for World of Warcraft news and opinions, Unshackled Fury. I'm your host, Berzerker. This is episode 107. And on today's show, we're discussing the newly announced World of Warcraft Dragonflight expansion, taking a high-level overview of all the major reveals, and we have an exclusive interview you'll only hear here on Unshackled Fury. But first, I wanted to say thank you to all of the people who reached out after the last episode 106, where I told you folks about what happened with my friend and neighbor. A rather unfortunate situation that occurred there, and a discussion about the importance of mental health and asking for help. The feedback and conversation I had with friends and strangers alike following that episode was really meaningful, and I appreciate everyone who reached out. It meant a lot to me, and it's been and continues to be a difficult time for our little bubble here. But it meant a lot for folks to reach out the way that they did. So I wanted to say thank you to all of you, and let's keep that conversation going, because I really do believe that it takes all of us to look out for each other to help prevent as many of those unfortunate occurrences as we can. I also wanted to say a thank you to Ease over at Realm Maintenance. There's an interview coming up with him that I did. I think it comes out next week, so a week after this episode posts. We had a good time talking about Dragonflight and about Unshackled Fury, and I managed to work in the one Swedish greeting that I know. So I had a good time over there, so thank you to Ease for having me on the show. And just fresh off of an appearance on Rolling Restart before I recorded this episode, and always have a good time chatting with Bro and Cinder and Manny over there. And if you haven't heard Manny's interview with Steve Denuser on For Azeroth, go check it out. It's brief, but listen, this is kind of how it works. You know, I behind the scenes kind of stuff. How these situations work, it's tricky. You have to really be ready when you have your drop-in time, and you got to have your questions and all your shit in gear, because that's the one opportunity that you get to interview whoever they've got lined up. And I thought Manny did an excellent job here, so pumping out that Warcraft radio flag and putting some good material out there for the brand. But great interview, great questions. Always awesome to hear from Steve, filling in some of the gaps that maybe we didn't get in the announcement. And I'll get into some of that later. But we have an exclusive interview of our own here on this humble little show. And, you know, you never know who's going to be important when it comes around to big announcements. You have certain things planned, I'm sure, on the Blizzard side. But invariably, there was always one star that emerges from whatever announcement they may have. And so it is with great pleasure that I introduced my guest today. he is the lone soldier. He is the last remaining party member. Watcher Coronos, a.k.a. Stony Tony. Welcome to Unshackled Fury. How the heck are you? Ha! You're too kind. No, it's a pleasure to have you on. And really, my first question for you is, how does it feel to be the first sex symbol of Dragonflight, picking up where Zappy Boy Zakan perhaps left off? How does that feel? Yeah. Yeah, I honestly, I don't think you're gonna have any trouble with that. Now you're as big as Elvis. But for you, how did you become a Watcher originally? Where did this all start? Oh, well, yeah, being created that way. Makes perfect sense. Yeah, and were you surprised that you were the only one left? Oh, I didn't realize you two were so close. I'm sorry. Well, for what it's worth, the rise that you took us on as you scaled those steps and turned that machine back on and all of that, it was a really powerful thing to watch. And as you struggled through those moments, there was a single point in time there where it looked like perhaps you'd been defeated after you turned that giant mechanism and the tower wasn't activating properly. But you could see this resolve on your face. What made you decide at the end to scale that tower? Oh yeah. I think it's very understandable. It looked hard. And once you get up there, you pull this all-time power move. You close that gap there. You reactivate the machine, and then you're blown off. And so at that moment, as we see you and you're falling, what's going through your mind as we assume at that point that we all think, did you at that moment feel that this was the end? Yeah, a Watcher's duty. Yeah. Yeah, because right then, here comes Alexstrasza, snatches you up. Is it uncomfortable at all to be in the clutches of a dragon going Mach 1? Oh, well. Yeah, I suppose they would have that kind of experience. Yeah. Well, and you're a pretty built dude, if you don't mind me saying. And for 10,000 years, you were a Watcher there. How did you stay in shape so long? Some supplements by Berzerker? Wait a second. You're not Stony Tony. You're Swolenka.
Hello. Just to let you know, I'm a big fan.
Denuser was right. Now, you put me in a terrible bind here, Brian Holenka, because I don't think this interview was authorized. So you probably better go. But hey, thanks for stopping by on Shackled Fury, and the mystery has been solved. Watcher Coronos, aka Stony Tony, is in fact Brian Holenka, the beloved Swolenka. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, man, absolutely. All right, thank you, everybody. Yep. Bye-bye.
Well, surprises around every corner. You just never know how things are going to go around here. That's what I love about expansion time is there's just something new around every bend. There's surprises around every corner. So, well, that was unexpected. But thanks for checking out our exclusive interview there. And if you're willing to hang on, we've got some more to come. And why don't we go ahead and jump into the namesake portion of this show and jump into some rage. Let's go. Let's rage. So I think most people would agree that when it comes to announcement season, expansions, BlizzCons, whatever you got, when Blizzard has big things to announce, it's an exciting time for us as players. That we get to see the new hotness, we get to nerd out about all the things that are coming, about the story, about the systems, what have you. This is a time for fun. This is a time to be excited in a world that's all gone to hell, and an expansion, coming out of an expansion, I should say, that I don't know is going to be as beloved as time goes on. It certainly isn't getting a lot of love right now. You know, this is a time for us to be excited. But I have to say, I am seeing way too many people getting way too upset about the lack of one feature that isn't really necessary to World of Warcraft. And that is player housing. I've been asked about it. I see other people talk about it. And I have seen people essentially say that the expansion itself, the newly announced, not even a week-old Dragonflight expansion, is already trash because they don't have player housing in the game. Something that the Garrison is the closest we've ever had, but not really a feature of World of Warcraft. Now, I know that there's other games out there that have it, but World of Warcraft doesn't need player housing to be successful. If you have married yourself to player housing as the one feature that has to happen, or else all is lost, I'm going to encourage you right now to let that go. Just let it go. Purge yourself of this need. Will it happen someday? It might. There's certainly a lot of love for the idea, right, that you have your own little house or hut or castle or whatever somewhere, and you've got all your pelts and trophies and weapons and shields and memories splattered all over the wall. I get it. I'm as nostalgic as anybody. But don't let that be the thing that destroys how you look at an expansion that's not even a week old. Let it go. You don't need to hang all your hopes and dreams on this one feature that we've never had, that we may not anytime soon, when there's a lot of other cool shit happening all around you. Just let it go. It's fine. If you need a dose of it, go to your Garrison. Or, you know what? Put stuff up around you in the real world. Print out a picture of a thing that you like. Or get a little trinket of something and put it on your desk. That's real player housing. Where do you live? Maybe put it on your desk at work. I don't know. I'm not here to create every solution for you. But don't let player housing be the thing that destroys all the good feelings before we've even left the gate. So, word of advice, FYI, a PSA, whatever you want to call it. Let go of the player housing. It's not that important, and it's not that necessary. So let's focus on all the cool stuff that we are getting, that is happening, that we can participate in, and make Dragonflight the best expansion that it could possibly be. So on that note, Dragonflight has been announced. Lots of news. Let's jump into it. Come on! So for the first time in a very long time, it turns out the rumors were true. The Dragonflight leak, that expansion leak, some of the other stuff that came along with it. I think a logo at one point, a screen cap of the cinematic, and something else. A picture of the Dracthyr and the Evoker. It was true. It was true. So just this past week, not even a week ago as this episode airs, the World of Warcraft team presented the Dragonflight expansion. And kicking it off, and the first thing I want to talk about today in this awesome dump of news that we got, is the cinematic. Every expansion opens with that teaser cinematic telling us where we're going to go to some degree, what we're going to be doing in some way, giving us a taste, a moment in time of the story that we're about to play through. And I dare say, nobody was expecting this rollout. If you said Dragon Isles, because I think that was the general consensus, right? We're going to the Dragon Isles. Dragonflight, that name did leak at one point, but not really the details behind it. But we would have thought something with Rathian, or something with all of the leaders, Alexstrasza, Caligos, those Dormu maybe. Maybe it had to do with Murazond. Spoiler alert. Maybe it had to do with one of these other major characters that we know. But no! We begin with the Watchers. These stone titanic beings that we've come across in the past. Think of Ulduar, Storm Peaks, old Titan Tech, that kind of thing. It starts with them and this voiceover from Alexstrasza, as we come to find out, saying that the world following the Sundering, which, if you recall, the Sundering was when the Well of Eternity imploded at the end of the War of the Ancients. This massive explosion that destroyed, I believe, 80% of the landmass on the one continent that was on Azeroth. That the world is crying out in pain following this catastrophic event. And for whatever reason, the dragons left, and this Titan, this Zeus-looking motherfucker with a big beard, he had to turn off this machine, this big tower, this machine that was there that was on its surface keeping the Dragon Isles not shrouded. I would I would think that you would turn it on to keep it hidden, but no, it was the other way around. So, see what we find out about that later. But this tower with this great glowing orb, this Titan tech, and it's shooting energy down into the planet. It depowers. Clouds come in. Everything gets covered up in a darkness. And Alexstrasza essentially says that when the time is right, light the beacon, and we'll return home. And so we see these stone watchers taking their posts around the Dragon Isles and essentially going to, standing sleep, essentially. And we had seen that this was 10,000 years in the past. And then there's the title reveal, the Blizzard part. And we focus on this one character, this one Watcher that we now know as Watcher Kornos, as he reawakens, as it says now, and he's covered with moss, and he's got a big crack across his chest. So time has clearly passed, and weathering has occurred. And as we come to find out, it appears that he's the only one left. And one of the things that I appreciated in this cinematic, and I picked up on it right away, and I noticed that other folks did too, is that at the moment that this Watcher reawakens, you hear a very familiar musical line from Dragonflight. This piano tinkle, whatever you want to call it. It's this very specific piece of music, and at that point I'm like, this is if I didn't know anything, I'm like, yeah, this is something with a dragon. But we see in the water there's this blue, I don't know what it is, something blue in the water, whether is it magic, is it some more old god something, we don't think Azeroth is bleeding anymore. Our buddy told us some time ago, Magni, that the bleeding had been stemmed, so I don't think it's Azerothian blood, but some kind of power, elemental power, whatever it is, it's waking up. And so this Watcher, he wakes and he looks back at the tower, and something within him tells him, I have to go up there and see what's going on and maybe turn this thing back on. So we see him walking up the aisle as it reawakens and flowers emerge. But there's also this chaotic elemental energy, lava flowing in as he walks up through this giant Titan structure, this massive Titan complex that is very reminiscent also, again, of the engine in Storm Peaks and Ulduar and Titan Tech, right? Very obviously Titan technology that we have seen in the past as he makes his way up there, and lava is kind of pouring in certain spots, and he reaches the top and sees whoever that other giant bearded watcher was in an incomplete state, missing an arm, looks like he's missing a face, as some of the others, the other watchers he had seen. And there was initially some speculation that was Tyr, because the name of this complex is Tyr's Hold. But it is not Tyr. Tyr was long killed in another time and place. Tyr's Fall. Have you ever been there? Yeah, buried in a tomb down there. So, don't know who that is. Maybe we'll find out later. But something in Watcher Kornos says, I have to be the one. Tries to unlock it. Of course, that unlock doesn't work. Then Kornos has to ascend this tower to try to close it. And it's really this part of the cinematic that I found the most powerful. And I don't know, maybe some therapy will tell me. But there's something about this part that really spoke to me, and it's the momentary resignation and then the resolve that I'm going to be the one to do the thing here that needs to be done. And you see it at cost to Kornos as he climbs and the cracks in his fingers emerge, and as he gets to the top and he grabs one side of that tower, then the other side of that tower around this orb to try to close the two sides and bring that orb together, and you see the strain as the cracks come up his arm and into his neck and his face, and this triumphant music is just coming right through, and you're feeling this moment. And to me, right in that time, I felt like this was almost the anti-Sylvanas moment, where she had broken the helm to shatter the sky. She had broken the helm to bring about this new thing. He was bringing something together, right? Bringing that orb together to usher in this new period that we're going to play through. And it's almost like if you've seen the Avengers movie where Thor has to hold open that giant apparatus so the energy from the star can flow through and they can make Stormbreaker, right? It's that personal cost and great strength that it requires to perform this heroic moment. It really just caught me. I found it very, very powerful. And as he closes the apparatus, the orb is brought together, and then poof, explosion. This power surge, whatever you want to call it. As the energy is now surging down back into the planet again, the skies are opening, and all of the clouds are washing away, and Kornos is blown off the tower, and he starts falling. And probably the most powerful image of all of this to me is where you see from sort of a longer shot him falling, and it's just this. I don't know. It's like Icarus maybe. It's just one of these classic images of this character who's achieved this moment, and now he's gonna pay the price. And as he falls, and I think we all kind of went on this journey of we've now bought into this character who has, as a few people said in this cinematic, more emotional tie to us now than our previous baddie, Zoval, did over an entire expansion. We now care more about this character that we don't even know their name. They don't even speak a word, but it is the way in which they communicate through the emotions and their actions that we have bought into this character all the way. And now we watch them falling to their death. And at the last moment, as Kornos' eyes close and he accepts his fate and the resignation that he's done what he needed to do and his mission has been accomplished, boom, here comes Alexstrasza out of nowhere, grabbing him, pulling him up. You see the look on her face, this sort of, ha ha ha, I gotcha. And then all the dragons come in, and we get the voiceover about the new age of dragons is going to begin, that the world is recovering, but we don't know quite what the future holds. And that, to me, that moment where Alexstrasza comes in and saves Kornos, to me that was very, spoiler alert, reminiscent of Endgame, the last Avengers movie, when Steve Rogers, Captain America, is facing off against this army of all of these foes that he can't possibly take on all by himself. That Thanos has finally triumphed, and you hear that sound, that crackle of that radio, as Sam says, "On your left," and those portals open. And when I was in the theater and that moment happened, people lost their shit. Rightfully so. It was an amazing moment of agony to ecstasy, and that's what this was as well. And so here we've been taken on this journey of this nameless, wordless soul who has reopened the Dragon Isles. The dragon aspects are now back, and it's time for us, or it will be when this expansion starts, it'll be time for us to go on a new journey to a place that we have long heard about, but never seen. So, overall, of course, always beautiful, always amazing in its visual nature. The soundtrack, Neil Acree, who has been doing work for Blizzard for many, many years, absolutely kills it with the soundtrack on this, with the score, where we have mystery, we have exaltation, we have it all. It's really well done, unique in that it wasn't a big character moment. It wasn't Sylvanas, it wasn't Varian, it wasn't one of the orcs, it wasn't Illidan. It was just some dude like us. Just some soul hero doing what needed to be done when no one else could. And so here we are. Dragonflight will be the new expansion. And we got a chance not just to watch. They didn't just drop that on us and then say, okay, Dragonflight, see you later. They gave us, I felt like, a fair amount of backstory in terms of where we're going, why we're going there, and what's happening. So, in its essence, Azeroth, as we have kind of danced around now for several expansions, Azeroth has this titan within the planet, and that the planet Azeroth that we know is like a cocoon, basically. So there's great power within this planet. There's been attempts to kill this titan. Remember, there's a big sword somewhere. There's been attempts to siphon the power out of this titan. Remember the last raid? Right? But now, somewhere, somehow, this titan, this energy is healing or awakening or something along those lines. So, the Dragon Isles are essentially the homeland for the dragons that we have come to know over all these years. And so for 10,000 years, or all the time really that we've been around as players, this land has been inaccessible, and the dragons have had to find their own way wherever they are. And what we've been told is that the story really is going to be about legacy and about the reckoning of the Dragonflights with their history, Rathian in particular, with the Black Dragonflight. Is he the right leader for what's left of this flight? I guess we'll find out. We're going to be reacquainting ourselves with a couple of races that we haven't seen in a while. The Tuskar, very popular, and the Centaurs, who were kind of not really doing much of anything for a lot of the history of Warcraft, but they apparently have been there on the Dragon Isles this entire time and have come into their own and have their own society and their own places and things that we're going to learn about. There are, of course, the Dracthyr, we're going to talk about in a minute, who are the new race that we're going to be able to play in Dragonflight. But we're also going to get to know these new zones, the new areas in the Dragon Isles where we're going to be adventuring during this expansion. And what they've essentially told us is that there are 5 zones, 4 leveling zones, and 1 intro zone. We're all going to funnel into the Waking Shores. That will be the first place that we go, and that's where it's, as they say, literally waking up around us after thousands of years, and that the elements and elementals and everything else around there are going to be in a state of, let's say, chaos. We're going to meet some proto-dragons coming around and eating us. That'll be fun. And we're also going to meet the Jaradine, or the Joradine, who are these... They describe them as a cross between like a giant and elementals. So these giant elementals that we're not necessarily going to be that friendly with. And they are not very friendly with the dragons either. And as we're going to come to find out, there is this history that we don't know anything about. That there are sort of ancient divisions that have been playing out apparently the entire time that the Dragonflights have been scattered. Things that have continued to go on. And we're first going to experience this in the Waking Shores via the Explorers League and the Reliquary. So they didn't quite explain how we, the player, are going to get there. It sounds like the Dragonflights were called home, and so when the clouds opened and they were able to get there pretty quickly. Because let's face it, there's not a lot of time between when Stony Tony's closing the tower there and he gets scooped up by Alexstrasza. It's very tight. So they had to be somewhere nearby, or else they have incredible speed that I don't think any of us were aware of. But the Waking Shores are where we are going to begin this adventure before heading into the Onaran Plains, which are supposed to be very wide open. There's some, they kept talking about this sort of cinematic shot that we're going to see once that land really opens up to us. I think in this same discussion that they had about this, we come to find out, I think, that they are expanding the view distance that we have had up to this point, which would be great, because if your computer can handle it, it's so awesome to be able to see in Warcraft really far distances, because sometimes it feels like things are farther away than maybe they really are, depending on your view or if you're walking versus flying. And so, like, if you're in Stormwind right now, if you have it all the way set out, you can see Karazhan all the way out there. And it's kind of neat to be able to do that. It also helps when you're trying to fly, so you don't get too lost. The next zone that they talked about was the Azure Span, which, and I love this, heavily inspired by Grizzly Hills. Now, that can be just something that you're looking to do for a cheap pop. You could throw Grizzly Hills into anything, and people are like, oh yes, God, I love it. I will say though, the screenshots that they were showing, and if you've never looked at the press kits that Blizzard puts out, I highly recommend that you do it. Everybody has access to them. It's a public thing. It's not like some influencer thing. Anybody can see it. You just go to the press room that they have. If you type in like Blizzard press room, it'll come up on Google, and you can see the screenshots and the logos and artwork, key art, that kind of stuff. The screenshots that they showed of these zones, it looks incredible. They mentioned, as an aside, that the zones in Dragonflight are going to be bigger than the zones that we had in Shadowlands. Now, I thought that the zones in Shadowlands were pretty good size. Part of what is going to be interesting about Dragonflight is that they kept talking about how the zones are very vertical. And as somebody who has played as much Cyberpunk as I have, it is an interesting concept, because you can have, if you try to stretch out the verticality of the area where you play, it can really work well. And you can pack a lot in on top of very little. But if you have a lot on top of a lot, that sounds like pretty ripe exploration to me. So I was pretty excited to hear about that. After the Azure span, Thaladrazzus. That's the 4th zone that we'll be going to. And this is supposed to be the seat of power for all 5 of the flights. This is where our main hub, Valdrakken, is going to be. And this is where we'll have our hub. They mentioned that this will be a place where there's an auction house. And this is where, interestingly enough, Tyr, remember Tyr? Tyr is going to be a very important titan through this expansion. Tyr built a facility there after helping the dragons fight Galakrond. There's so much about that story, but we're not going to get into that right now. But the story of Tyr, Galakrond, the Dragonflights, how the aspects were created, that is a very, very big story, and it's going to be central to much of what happens here. And I'll get into that more at another point. You can always read about this stuff if you want, but you're going to be hearing about those themes later on. And then last but not least, the Forbidden Reach is going to be a 5th zone, and this is an area that was built by Neltharion as a training ground for his ultimate soldiers, the Dracthyr. So the Dracthyr, as I mentioned before, and as I'm sure you've seen, they are the new hotness. They are the new race that we are going to be able to play in World of Warcraft and in Dragonflight. Specifically, they also come with their own class. They are the Evokers. So they are a race that was created by Neltharion with the powers of all 5 Dragonflights. So these Evokers have the ability to draw from any one of the flights. And that is going to make for some very interesting, let's say, tuning when it comes to creating this kit. But I really like it thematically. Now, so far, we've seen the Dracthyr have an enormous array of customizations, except for their size. Now, that's the one complaint I've seen the most of, is that the Dracthyr look a little on the skinny side, and a bunch of us are crying for some more beefy boys. Sounds like they may have that in the works, but the customization options appear to be quite robust when it comes to the Dracthyr, and they've shown off, whether it's scales or hair or horns or whatever you got, both on the draconic side and the human side, because they're going to be able to switch between both. Pretty impressive. The Evoker, this is going to be a ranged DPS or healer, and they'll be able to pull from, let's say, Devastation is the ranged DPS spec, and it'll focus on red and blue magic. Preservation will be the healing spec and focus on green and bronze magic. They're associating green's magic with heals, although Ease over on Realm Maintenance made a great point that shouldn't that be red as well? Alexstrasza, the healer, maybe not. Fire, red dragon. That makes sense. They're trying something very interesting, I think, with the Evoker class, where normally we just push buttons, right? When something comes up, you push it, whatever. They are going to try something a little bit different called empowered spells, where depending on how long you hold down a button, I'm sure up to a certain point, it'll actually channel that ability before releasing it. Now, for raiding, I'm really curious how that would work, considering that most fights you're constantly moving. So that may not necessarily have as great a benefit in that situation, but I'm also speaking off the cuff, having never seen it. The Dracthyr are the only ones that can be Evokers, and I believe that Evokers can only be Dracthyr, so they are married 1-to-1. They'll be able to fly, to some degree while they're casting. Somebody I talked to recently said that they're kind of like the anti-demon hunter, where the demon hunter is melee and tanking. These evokers are going to be healing and DPSing from a distance, and they'll also be mail wearers. So they're kind of filling in a little bit of a different space than we've seen. They will be a hero class, which will be nice in terms of leveling, so you don't necessarily have to start all the way down at level 1. You'll be able to start at a higher level and work your way up. And I do believe that over time they will probably release that hold of Dracthyr and Evoker, that tie. That it makes sense to me that as we learn more about them and they learn more about us, that culture's being shared, right? That Dracthyr could be warriors. Like, come on. Everybody can be a warrior. A Dracthyr should be a warrior. Let's face it. Beefy dragon warrior tank. Dude. That's one of the most amazing things I could possibly think of. It's possible, if in some later date, Dracthyr could be warriors. I don't know, maybe. Maybe Berzerker. Maybe Berzerker was a secret dragon all along. I don't know. You give me some pretty sweet abilities, and that just might happen. But that is the new setup that's being offered to us in terms of class and race. I am not surprised that we have a dragon-related race, the Dracthyr. That makes perfect sense for where we're going and what we're doing. That seems right on the money. Adding another class, very surprised by. I don't know that I will be pinning my hopes on wanting to play one full time. I will absolutely check it out. There's no question, because it'll, at the very least, it'll be something to talk about here. But balancing as many classes as they've had and now adding another one, oh boy, it's going to be a challenge. And this is where all of you come in. For those of you that are interested, sign up for that beta. If you can get in, sign up for that beta and test this stuff out. We're now in an age, apparently, where Blizzard is wanting to listen to and act upon player feedback more earnestly than they have in the past. So if you get out there, you get a chance, test it out. Kick the tires. See what's going on. It's the only way we're going to figure these things out and make sure that when the game launches, it's in as good a state as possible. World of Warcraft, I think one of the things that's so unique and a double-edged sword is that we, the players, get a chance to sample and test out so much before it's released to the public. And I beat this drum all the time, and now is the time when I get to take another shot at it, is when the beta rolls around. If you're lucky enough to get in, or maybe if I can get some beta keys, if that's a thing anymore, and we can get them out, now is the time to test those things out and find out what feels good, what doesn't feel good, where do these things fit in. A lot of the stuff that was announced, I'm sure it'll make it in the game in one form or fashion, but nothing is set in stone. You have to remember, we're probably still a ways away, and I'll talk about this later. So there are going to be things that go through several iterations before they go live. And if you can be a part of that, please give your 2 cents. Tell them what you think about what they're working on, because I really do believe that now is a time when they're listening to it more than ever. In addition to the Dracthyr, the Evokers, we also are getting something a little different. I think it's going to be a bit divisive. I think there are going to be people that love it. There are going to be people that hate it. And there are going to be people that are just doing it because they have to. Dragon riding. So dragon riding is going to be the new flight system in Dragonflight. So the traditional way of earning flying, and we fly and we do our thing. That's not going to be what happens in Dragonflight. Now, everywhere else that we have flight, all that stuff is going to, what they said is it's all going to work the same as it has been. None of that stuff changes. But in the Dragon Isles, we will not have traditional flying. We will have dragon riding. And so the best way that I can explain my understanding of dragon riding is they're attempting to make a system that is more true to how flight systems in reality work. If you've ever played any of the Arkham games, so like Arkham Knight, Batman, where you have to grapple up to a point and then you can dive bomb down, you throw out your cape and you catch a wind essentially, and you can bounce up and fly, and you're kind of sailing through the air, you're floating through the air, and you can go down and up, and it's more of a realistic way, enhanced of course, because it obviously doesn't really work that way, but it's closer to the truth, let's say. And so that's the way that this system is going to work. We'll have it sounds like initially, in some base form. Then we'll be able to level up this system over time, where we're going to get different skills, animations like they showed, spinning, like barrel roll type thing. Do a barrel roll. They're trying to make it unique to the Dragon Isles, and I dig it. I like where they're going with this. Again, thematically, very on brand. They're going to have an opportunity here to do something that's a little, I think, more modern. Flight is great. Everybody loves it. We chase it all the time. They're going to have what sounds to be a super customizable system of creating your mount. So everybody will get a mount for this dragon riding, and they'll have different types of drakes to choose from. Proto Drake for the win. Come on. They'll have different drakes. They talked about different snoots and different tails and wings and effects and armor. You got to get the armored one. All these different combinations. They said that there are literally millions of combinations of how you can make your drake. So you're going to see a lot of different ones. I'm sure there'll be some choice combinations out there, but that you will be able to customize this dragon mount, and then that will be, and you can use your other mounts as ground mounts, they said, but this will be your form of transportation flight wise as you get through. And so as you continue to improve this dragon riding skill, you can hunt down what they said are ancient glyphs and other ways of advancing through your dragon riding skill tree. And that's going to be important because apparently the denizens of the Dragon Isles will knock inexperienced dragon riders out of the sky. So it's not just going to be a leisurely stroll through the skies. You're going to have to kind of know what you're doing. Movement speed, they said, is going to be faster than existing flying mounts. So depending on how you build up that speed, you'll be able to get around quicker. They mentioned, again, that the verticality of these zones is part of how this plays in. So if you're starting from a high point, you'll be able to dive bomb down, right? And float and shoot right back up into the skies and through the cloud layers. So it's an interesting attempt at something new. I was pretty excited to see this and to see it in action. If you haven't watched the video, I really encourage you to go and watch the video that World of Warcraft posted about how this system works, because I thought it was very interesting. Maybe it'll get annoying later on down the road, I don't know, but with seemingly not unlimited, but with millions of combinations of a personal dragon that you can make and sort of a mini game within this system, that sounds like a lot of fun, and I'm pretty excited about that. So we'll see. Now, again, things to test. One of the things that somebody mentioned somewhere is if you are prone to motion sickness, please get out there and test this, because they are also taking that kind of feedback into account, and that is important. But coming along with everything else, we've got Dracthyr, Evokers, and dragon riding. Also of import that was discussed in this big reveal is that the World of Warcraft team is going to be revamping the entire talent system as we know it. So one of the big complaints over the last several expansions is that we've kind of gone through this boom and bust cycle of borrowed power. You've seen every kind of legendary artifact, neck piece, weapon, what have you. We've had a variety of these things where in the last handful of expansions, we've had an item or items that we've either had to find or craft and power them up, and that gives us these great extra killer abilities. And then we get to the next expansion, and all of that means nothing. In the case of our artifacts from Legion, they were depowered and essentially worthless. Right? And that has not been very popular at all. So what they're attempting to do this time around is we're going old school. Goodbye borrowed power. Hello talent trees. So for those of us that have been around for a little while, you will fondly remember talent trees where whatever class you played, you had these talent trees where you would put points into certain, not necessarily abilities, but certain bonuses or sometimes abilities or certain characteristics that made you kind of one flavor of your spec or class or another. When I first came in as a warrior and I didn't know anything in Burning Crusade, I was all excited about being a 31-30 warrior, which means I had 30 points in one tree, 31 points in another tree, no points in a third tree, protection. And that, of course, that was a worthless spec for raiding, but I liked it because it was good for PvP and I didn't know any different. And I crafted a bunch of weapons that I thought were good, and it turns out they weren't, and I wasted a bunch of time. But be that as it may, those are the kinds of systems that we used to have way back when, where as you leveled up, you got a point or points that you could put into these talent trees and decide, what you wanted to do with your class and spec. Most of the time, it was pretty cookie cutter. If you did raiding, there was one path you had to follow. PvP, another. And that's just kind of how it was. And as we got higher in levels, those talent trees started to become pretty unwieldy. And they also, like I said, just kind of didn't matter because people would follow one path or another, and that was it. So what they're doing now is they want to try to create or recreate talent trees, but in a new way, where you as a player have more choice about what your character has. And so as you level, you will be able to spend these points on spells, abilities, I don't know if it's passive or active or whatnot, these things that will help you be stronger as time goes on. The way that they have it figured out right now is that there will be two trees, a class tree and a spec tree. And what they envision is that the class tree will be related to utilities that are specific to that class, while the spec tree will be about portions that are specific to the type of spec that you want to play. So like warrior stuff and then fury things within that warrior stuff. So that's kind of how I look at it on the warrior side. And what's exciting about this is that they're trying to encourage the anti-cookie cutter approach to this system. They really want to create the sort of depth and breadth to this talent tree system that's going to encourage people to try different things. And further from that, what they've discussed with the system so far is that they want a loadout system where you will be able to save certain setups. You can name them whatever you want, and then you can rotate between them as needed. So let's say you want to try maybe a few more points in one direction or another to see, Does that help me with survivability? Does that help me with damage? Does it help me with healing or whatever? You'll be able to kind of test those out in this sort of laboratory fashion. What's really exciting about this even further is, again, right now, they are actively soliciting feedback about what you, my dear listener, want to see in this system. And so, I come to a listener question that I got this past week. This is from @PeterTrophius. Is there some platonic ideal Fury build you'd like to see from old talents, set bonuses, borrowed power? Or should it all be brand new stuff? So here's what I don't want. What I don't want is a bunch of the really boring plus 1% to crit, plus 1% to haste. That is so uninspiring, I cannot even tell you. It sounds like they want to get away from that, so that's great. So things like Odin's Fury. Things like, I want to play Fury, but I want to focus on Titan's Grip Fury, which means two two-handers, or I want to do single-minded Fury, which means that you've got two one-handers, putting points into those that make one more beneficial to you than the other. Could there be a gladiator stance return? I don't know. I think it's a little bit of everything. Clearly, there are popular things within each class and spec that people want to see. And I'm sure that if this is the holistic approach that they want to take, there must be a way to add as many of these things as possible. I like the idea of set bonuses. I think borrowed power needs to just be left in the dustbin of history. You can bring back some of the old talents, some of the legendary talents that we've had, I like the idea of pairing, let's say, recklessness, right, with whirlwind. I thought that was pretty fun. Or avatar, having those three kind of mix and match. Odin's Fury was just an awesome attack that just visually looked amazing, and they got rid of it. And to me, it's a crime that they had time and energy and money spent on creating this effect and this ability, and it's just been left for several expansions now, just sitting in the back room somewhere. So, for me, having meaningful differences between Titan's Grip, Single-Minded Fury, bringing back those old abilities, maybe bringing in some of the popular legendary abilities. To me, those are the kinds of things that I would like to see, along with, what about the old stuff that we used to have with glyphs, right? Blazing trails when we are charging something. Let's say that maybe there's a spell effect, so when I do my interrupt, sometimes it's a shoulder, sometimes it's a headbutt. Where's my headbutt? This is a great time to bring in the headbutt ability I've been asking for all these years. Maybe there's a way to do that with a talent tree of this size. So I am pretty excited about that. And among all of these things that I've talked about today, there are a litany of other interviews that you can go seek out. Watch the videos. There's tons more information about the coming expansion and all of these various aspects than what I've covered here. There's too much to cover. So again, this is my very high-level overview of some of the major hits that I wanted to talk about. But before we close out, I did want to talk about what we didn't see, because that is also, I think, a relevant point of concern for people in the community. First and foremost, probably the biggest of them all, there was no release time frame. In the past, we've seen things like, winter, late summer, sometime part of the year. I remember when Warlords came out and they showed the cinematic, and it was, November when it was, and they showed it to us, and that felt like forever away. That is, I think, a big sticking point for people, because if you're not even telling us this year or 2023, it feels like it's a long way away. That doesn't mean that it is necessarily. I still think that they can get it in this year based on some of the things that we're seeing. But the fact that they haven't said anything about a release date, that is a little worrying. That is a little worrying. That does feel like we are looking at January, February, March of 2023, which is a long way away. If you look at the history kind of patches, that could very well be. You know, we just got 9.2. 9.25 could come sometime in the summer. And then we've got, 7-8 months of 9.2.5. There's not going to be a lot in it, but there is going to be some stuff. And that may be what has to tide us over for a while. So the fact that there isn't a release date or even a time frame for a release date, that is a little concerning. But given the uncertainties of the world, quite frankly, everything that's happened over the last few years, I can't blame them. I really can't. And when you set that expectation and you say, by the end of 22, you're putting a hard cap on what can and can't be done. I'd like to think that Blizzard is going back to at least one of the true core values of Blizzard, which is that it'll be ready when it's ready. And that's what I expect out of them. And if that means I got to wait until 23, then I'll wait until 23. We also didn't see anything about raids and dungeons. There's one line about a raid on the website. But other than that, we didn't see anything. And for the raiding crowd and for the dungeon running crowd, that is a concern. That should be something that, as far into the development time frame as I hope we are, you know these things. You know what your dungeons are. You know where they are. You know where your raid is. Who's in there. What big bad are we chasing? Like, what's going on with those situations? And we didn't hear a peep. What I'll say about that is this initial rush of information that we've gotten from the expansion announcement, from everything else, that was not intended to be the end-all be-all. I think that was intended to be, here's what we can show comfortably up to this point. That doesn't mean we don't know. And as Manny pointed out on the Rolling Restart episode that we just recorded, very astutely, is that the videos that we watched, these are old videos. It's not like they were recorded yesterday. They were probably recorded a little while ago. And what they were telling us were like the lock-solid things. There's going to be a Dragonflight expansion. There's going to be Dracthyr. There's going to be Evokers. There's going to be Dragon Riding. We're going to revamp the talent system. We're going to redo the UI. All of these things, right? They felt comfortable enough to talk about them, at least generally. And then you've had follow-up interviews in other places to start locking down more recently where that journey is going. So I don't think that they don't have this information. I think they're probably saving it for one of these quarterly updates or blog type deals every month or every other month or whatever. That information is going to come. And if we're as far away as I think we are from the release, it's fine. We'll all be patient. Shadowlands isn't technically over. There's still a little bit of meat left on that bone, and they're going to want to put attention to that as well. So a little bummed out that we didn't see that, because we all want to know what that portion of the story is, what the end game time is going to look like. But we'll get there, so sit tight. But last but not least, the other really super big thing that we got no indication of is, who is the big bad? Who are we fighting against? Is it just dragon Civil War drama? I don't think so. I've heard everything from the resurrection of Galakron to Nosdormu's transformation into Murazan to, who knows? It could be any number of these things. It could just be interplanetary warfare between all kinds of Titan monstrosities and old gods, and it could go any number of ways. But they are, I think, intentionally slow rolling this. It mentioned Mists of Pandaria as an expansion where we didn't really know at the onset who is the big bad that we're fighting, right? We showed up in Pandaria, Horde and Alliance together, trying to figure out who they are. We fought the Shah, and then it turns out that Garrosh is the final boss. And we're going to face a little bit of that here. Quite honestly, I trust them. I know it's silly to say. I trust them to give us this information when it's going to be the most impactful. I don't know that we need to get that far ahead of ourselves right now, because too often we play the game of, okay, well, we're going here, we're going to face them, and then we know we're going to beat them. So then after we beat them, what's next? And it's almost like taking this entire book and just, what's the first page? What's the last page? Okay, I'm going to throw it out the window. Nah, if they can abate that as much as possible, I support that. So I, too, very curious. We all have theories about who that final big bad could be, but I'm sure that they will tell us in due time. So in the meantime, Dragonflight, it's the next expansion. I'm pretty jazzed about it. I feel like from the conversation that's happened so far, this overall is an attempt to kind of reset the floor for Warcraft. It's been a bruising expansion, to say the least, with Shadowlands. It didn't launch under the best circumstances. It was during a time when more of the hideous, dirty laundry of Blizzard was coming out, more so than ever. We had members of the community fleeing left and right. It has not been a good time, to say the least. And players in-game have been rejecting many of the systems that have been in place. The overall acceptance of the game has really been dying down. Not dying all the way, but it is quieter than it used to be. And with Dragonflight, what I see and what I hear is that this is an attempt to really try to right this ship with a writing team that has now taken the reins. The Afraziabi saga with Sylvanas is complete or over, or we're nearly past it all the way. That era has come to a close, or is coming to a close, and now we're getting to go back to Azeroth, starting with some new lore, with some familiar faces, but ones we haven't seen in quite a while. Putting characters like Sylvanas and Anduin somewhere to hang out for a bit. Sounds like Khadgar's going to be back. Everybody loves Khadgar. Well, maybe not everybody. I don't know everybody, but I think a lot of people like Khadgar, so it'll be nice to see Dadgar back. We're going back to systems that are familiar, and we're getting back to what makes Warcraft in the eyes of so many. You know, swords, shields, wizards, dragons. I mean, it doesn't get more old school D&D RPG than that kind of setup, and I applaud them. Now's the time. This is when you want to talk about pulling a ripcord. This is the ripcord that you got to pull. Going back to basics. What are the things that people love about Warcraft? And it's also about community. And hopefully, with the changes that are being made with both in-game and out, we'll see that community begin to rebuild as well. So overall, I'm pretty hyped about this. I was asked about this on Rolling Restart. You can hear more of my answers there, but I'm pretty hyped about what I've seen so far. Yes, there's more to come, but I like the general direction that they're going. I like that they're talking about listening to player feedback and trying to find a new sense of balance in the order of things for the World of Warcraft. So my eyes are up to the sky. I'm hopeful, and as things develop, guarantee, turn into Unshackled Fury, and I will be talking about it. Oh, wait. Before I forget and close out this show, there was one more important announcement that was made this past week, and that is the other not well held secret that Wrath of the Lich King Classic is on its way. So there was a really fantastic trailer that they put out, and it's a sort of an audio salad of all of these great moments that occurred throughout the Wrath expansion, and culminating with the reforging of Frostmourne. And it was a really awesome journey to take us on just over a brief period to make the announcement. And sure enough, Wrath of the Lich King will be the next classic version of Warcraft that is coming. They didn't give a date, but at least, unlike Dragonflight, they did tell us that they expect it sometime in 2022. Fall, winter probably would be my guess. But if there was any expansion where I would consider a classic run, it's this one. People that came late may not understand this, and certainly people that were around will. Wrath was the zenith, was the height for World of Warcraft. It had the most subscriber count, the highest subscriber count, I should say, at that time. I think that was when it was in the cultural zeitgeist. That's when it was really part of the conversation. And the story, the way everything worked. The only fault I have is that the Old War patch was too short, and the final patch was too long, and nobody really remembers what Ruby Sanctum was. But it was, and still is for me, the best expansion. And if there is truly a place of nostalgia that I'm going to be seeking, it would be this one. So Wrath of the Lich King Classic is on its way. I don't know what setup they're going to have necessarily yet. You'll be able to play your Death Knight like you would in the past. They did say that they will not be doing the looking for group, the looking for dungeon, the dungeon finder that was introduced. I don't think that is a good move. I understand that is part of the current classic culture, but for those of us that had a terrible time in BC getting groups together, that thing was a godsend. And so now to have that taken off the table, I don't know if that's necessarily something that I would support. But I'm not going to be there full time. It's going to be as a tourist, but there's nothing like that first hit when you're taking the boat, you end up in Howling Fjord, you're right there, Vrykul in your face, and you're off and running all through there. Wrath was a special time, and it is truly, I think, one of the best expansions, if not the best expansion. Seeing the rise and fall of Arthas and all of the Dragonflights being involved, the great times that we had with the Wrathgate, and running, I hope, the original quest line where you get to do the battle for Undercity. Those were amazing times, and I look back on them fondly. Maybe people that didn't get to experience it originally will get to do it now. So Wrath of the Lich King Classic on its way sometime this year, and if you get a chance, come join me. We'll hook it up, Rommel. I know you're out there. Let's do it. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode. My thanks to all of you for listening. And remember, you can always follow me and this show on Twitter at Berzerker Rage and Unshackled_Fury. You can also join our Discord, links for which are in the profile of the show on Twitter and on our Warcraft Radio page. Feel free to contact the show with your questions, comments, or otherwise through any of those resources or unshackledfury.com. And you can find this show wherever you get your podcasts. So once again, thank you for listening. Remember to keep your swords wet and your banners high. And we'll see you next time. Farewell.